Maya Poshashi Kodanitai Jaya Maya Poshashi Iskam Guru Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. Srila Prabhupada Ki. This is the chapter entitled Uniting Two Worlds. Srila Prabhupada's letters acknowledging the Christmas marathon and assuring the devotees that they would go back to Godhead sent the book distribution movement flying into the new year with great momentum. Devotees continue to find new ways and places to distribute books. New records were constantly topping the old, and the devotees were making still higher projections for the future. Pragosh, I was coming regularly to see the Detroit temple for classes in the evening, and I was doing some odd work to help the devotees prepare the temple. Every night I would be painting, and I would watch the devotees coming back from Sankirtan. They seemed very ecstatic and enlivened. I was always a little curious about what they did out there that made them come back like this. I would be up on my ladder painting and listening to them talk as they sat on the floor drinking hot milk. They would talk about how they had knocked on one man's door, and this had happened, and then that had happened. It was very attractive to me. After I moved into the temple and had been a devotee about a week, someone asked me if I would like to go out and try distributing books. So I went out wearing a dhoti and tilak and using a straightforward presentation, walking up to people, giving them a card and a book, telling them about the contents of the book, showing them Prabhupada's picture, and asking for a donation. The exhilaration I got from this was just incredible. I became extremely blissful to go out and do this. None of us could actually put a finger on why it was so ecstatic. We used to lie awake at night. All the brahmacharis stayed in one big room, and we would lie there on the floor in our sleeping bags whispering to each other, what did you say to the people out there? That would be all these different conversations going on in the room at night with the lights out and everyone talking, trying to relate how we were presenting Prabhupada's books. Tripurari. My association with Srila Prabhupada was always more or less in separation and in the field. While many of the older devotees were trained personally by Prabhupada, I never got that training. I was trained by Srila Prabhupada more from within my own heart. I think that's the case with all of our book distributors. They have a very intimate sense of feeling for Prabhupada, but they never had much personal contact. Their intimacy and real sense of knowing Prabhupada was very closely, was because of that service which Prabhupada said was his life and soul, seeing that the books went out. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, entitled King Chitraketu Meets the Lord, Text 57. Yad etad vishmritam punso. Yad etad vishmritam punso. Madbhavam binam atmana. Madbhavam binam atmana. Tata samsara etasya. Tata samsara etasya. Dehad deho miter miti. Dehad deho miter miti. Yad etad vishritam pumso. Madbhavam binamatmana. Tat samsara etasya. Deha deho maternity. Yade tal vishpitam pumsa. Balbabam bilamatmana. Tata samsara etasha. Deha deho maternity. Tata samsara etasha. Deha deho maternity. Yadital vishvitam hongsa. Madbhavam vilamatmana. Samsara etasha. Deha deho maternity. Yadital vishvitam hongsa. Vilamatmana. Tata samsara etasha. Deha deho maturity. Yadital vishvitam hongsa. Vilamatmana. Tata samsara etasha. Deha deho maturity. Yat, which, etat, this, Vishmritam, forgotten, Pungsa, of the living entity, Matbhavam, my spiritual position, Vinam, separation, Atmana, from the Supreme Soul, Tata, from that, Samsara, material conditional life, Etaja, of the living entity, Dehat, from one body, Deha, another body, Mrite, from one death, Mriti, another death. When a living entity thinking himself different from me forgets his spiritual identity of qualitative oneness with me in eternality, knowledge, and bliss, his material conditional life begins. In other words, instead of identifying his interests with mine, he becomes interested in his bodily expansions, like his wife, children, and material possessions. In this way, by the influence of his actions, one body comes from another, and after one death, another death takes place. Responsibly, please. When a living entity, thinking himself different from me, forgets his spiritual identity of qualitative oneness with me in eternity, knowledge, and bliss, his material conditional life begins. In other words, instead of identifying his interest with mine, he becomes interested in his bodily expansions, like his wife, children, and material possessions. In this way, by the influence of his actions, one body comes from another. And after one death, another death takes place. By Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Generally, the Mayavadi philosophers or persons influenced by Mayavadi philosophers think themselves as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the cause of their conditional life, as stated by the Vaishnava poet Jagannananda Pandit in his Prema Vivata. Krishna Bahya Mukha Hanaboga Vanchakali Nikatasta Maya Tari Japatiya Dari. As soon as a living entity forgets his constitutional position and endeavors to become one with the Supreme, his conditional life begins. The conception that the Supreme Brahman and the living entity are equal, not only in quality, but also in quantity, is the cause of conditional life. If one forgets the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entity, his conditional life begins. Conditional life means giving up one body to accept another and undergoing death to accept death again. The Mayavadi philosopher teaches the philosophy of Tattvam Asi, saying you are the same as God. He forgets that Tattvam Asi applies in terms of the marginal position of the living entity, who is like sunshine. There is heat and light in the sun, and there is heat and light in the sunshine, and thus they are qualitatively one. But one should not forget that the sunshine rests on the sun. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the original source of Brahman. The sunshine is important because of the presence of the sun globe. It is not that the sun globe is important because of the all-pervasiveness of the sunshine. Forgetfulness and misunderstanding of this fact is called Maya. Because of forgetfulness of one's constitutional position and that of the Supreme Lord, one comes into Maya or samsara, conditional life. In this regard, Madhvacharya says, Savabhinam paratmanam, Bhishmaram samsadad iha, Abhinam samsmaram yati, Tamo nasyatra samshaya. When one thinks that the living entity is non-different in all respects from the Supreme Lord, there is no doubt that he is in ignorance. Tamaha. Om Agyanatamiranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Madhopastam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhattarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So when a living entity, thinking himself different from me, forgets his identity and also forgets his eternality, knowledge and bliss, his material conditional life begins. Instead of identifying his interest with mind, he becomes interested in bodily expansions like his wife, children, and material possessions. In this way, he gets one body after another. So Prabhupada says that in the purport, he's referring to Mayavadi philosophy. And he says, as soon as the living entity forgets his constitutional position and endeavors to become one with the Supreme, his conditional life begins. So generally we don't think of that we're being Mayavadis when we're trying to enjoy the material energy, and we've forgotten that there is a God, or we don't believe there is a God. We don't see that as being Mayavadi. But Srila Prabhupada is saying here, you may be either a Mayavadi philosopher, or you may be a follower of a Mayavadi philosopher. So you may not have really thought it out, but you're just following somebody else. And they're probably just following somebody else as well, because I don't think many people really sit down and work it out that they're going to become a Mayavadi philosopher. They just go with the general flow, whatever it is. It takes someone with a certain amount of intelligence to decide, okay, I'm going to have a philosophy about life, and I'm going to apply these principles. So just by default, if you don't try to resist the influence of the material energy, then the material energy will just make you a Mayavadi without you having to try too hard. And the material energy will condition you to feel that your wife and your bodily expansions and your material possessions are the things that you should be concerned with. And this business about God, well, we can maybe start that out tomorrow or the day after, or maybe when I'm really old. And that day never comes, unfortunately. So conditional life means giving up one body to accept another and undergoing death to accept death again. So Srila Prabhupada was saying in a lecture that even if you say, okay, look, I'm okay with everything. I know there's some misery here. It's not perfect, but I'm okay with it. I accept it for what it is. Like if you're a prisoner in a cell and then you decide, well, I'm just going to make my cell nice, put some nice wallpaper and get myself a nice cabinet from IKEA and everything will be fine, you know. But even then, you can't even stay in the jail permanently. Eventually you get kicked out and you get thrown in another cell, and then kicked out of that one and thrown in another cell. So There can be no real happiness because there can be no real peace. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, unless there's peace, there's no question of happiness. So how to become peaceful? We can only become peaceful when we regain our original nature, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. This is our inherent characteristic, and this is the quality. Interesting, isn't it, that we want to become God, and the more we challenge God's authority, the more we lose our godlike qualities, our awareness of our eternality, our bliss, and our knowledge. Those things get withdrawn the more we try and assert ourselves as being God, which is interesting. It's kind of counterintuitive. You would think that the more I'm trying to be God, the more I'm going to develop this ability to be eternal and blissful and full of knowledge, but exactly the opposite takes place. And then counterintuitive, we're thinking, well, if I bow down and I become subservient and I give up my pride, this is not going to be good for me. But this will reawaken our real our nature, our qualitative nature, and we start to realize that qualitatively we're the same as God. And that's a big relief, actually, to know that God's just the same as us, that he has feelings the same as us, and aspirations and inclinations just the same as we do. Srila Prabhupada said, we're like a sample God. So if you have some seawater, first of all, you purify the seawater. Maybe there's other contaminants in it. But once you have pure seawater, then you have a very accurate indication of what the ocean is like. So then we become aware, well, I'm eternal, I'm blissful, I'm full of knowledge. So certainly God must be all these as well, but to an unlimited degree. And the drop of seawater can never be compared quantitatively with the ocean. So that's the mistake that the Mayavadis make, that they consider themselves as good as the ocean. Or as Srila Prabhupada is saying here, they consider the sunlight is as good and as important as the sun, but the sunshine is resting on the sun. Take the sun away, and the sunshine doesn't exist any longer. The sunshine is important because of the presence of the sun globe. So people are thinking, well, I want to be more important than God. In fact, God doesn't exist, okay? So just see me, I'm the important one. But all they do is reduce their own importance. Or, as Srila Prabhupada once put it, either we accept that there is God, or all other arguments are meaningless. So you've got your choice. You can either choose to have a meaningful life, or you can choose to have a meaningless life. It is not that the sun globe is important because of the all-pervasiveness of the sunshine. So the sun globe is not dependent upon the sunshine for its importance, because it is the source of the sunshine. And forgetfulness and misunderstanding of this fact is called Maya. So, so two things: being forgetful, and then also misunderstanding. So being forgetful is less of a problem, because if you're forgetful, then you just know you need to remember something. But if you misunderstand something, then that's more of a problem. So because of forgetfulness of one's constitutional position, one comes into Maya. And Maya means samsara, the wheel of birth and death. So we're always rotating through all these different births and deaths. Bhaktivinoda Thakur refers to this wheel, actually. He says that when you enter the wheel of birth and death, just as it was very easy to enter, at the right time it'll be very easy to leave as well. I remember Sriti Dharma giving a class once, and he was saying it's like a person being blind in a cell, and he's feeling his way around the cell. And every time he comes to the entrance to get out the cell, he gets distracted. And then he moves around again, and he keeps missing this chance. But when he does finally take the chance to get out of the samsara, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying it's very easy to just step back out again, just as easy as it was to step in. So that requires timing, patience, and determination. When one thinks that the living entity is non-different in all respects from the Supreme Lord, there is no doubt that he is in ignorance, tama. So the Lord is referred to as Uttama. Uttama is beyond tama. And Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam kalbe editam kalmashalpaham Shravanamangalam Srimad Bhavirganantiye Buddha Jannaha. The most munificent are those that transmit these descriptions and words of the Supreme Lord, which are full of spiritual power, eradicate all sinful reactions, and are all auspicious. So Srila Prabhupada was emphasizing this book distribution so that the living entities can become aware again and become free from their ignorance, their tama, which is the cause of all their suffering. Any questions or comments? When a living entity thinks that he's different from me, he forgets his identity of not eternity, knowledge, and bliss, and he becomes interested in his wife and his children and possessions, and then he gets one body after another, death after death.
Prabhupada makes it clear in the purport the living entity's constitutional position is not to be merging in the Brahman, because he says that in a state of ignorance. So it would appear that whether you leave the spiritual world and think yourself one, or whether you're in the material world and you try to liberate yourself to that, in any case, it's always a state of ignorance for the living entity. I wonder if you could say a bit more about that.
There's a very interesting book, Brihad Bhagavatam Rita by Sanatana Goswami, and it's the description of Gopal Kumar making his way back to Goloka Vrindavan, and he chants this mantra that takes him there eventually. But before he gets there, he has to go through a lot of goes through all the different higher planetary systems, then through the different layers of the universe, and then he comes out into the Brahman, and then finally he comes into Vaikuntha, Ayodhya, and then Goloka. So it's quite a journey he goes on. But it's interesting, throughout his entire journey, through all the different planets and coverings of the universe, the only time that Gopal Kumar became afraid was when he was in the Brahman. It was the only time he couldn't remember his Lord. Every now and then the superstar would flash up in front of his face, and then it would just go back to this dazzling white light. And he became afraid. So that's interesting, because you'd think, well, it must get better and better and better, and then eventually Brahman, you're in total bliss, and then you can go up from there. But the Brahman is a scary situation for a devotee to be in, because the devotee can remember the Lord anywhere in the material world very easily, higher, lower planetary systems, even in different species of life. We see with Bharat Maharaj, even when he was a deer, he always had that connection. But in the Brahman, then it becomes difficult. And so for the devotee, he rejects the Brahman. And there's a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he's saying, liberation comes running, and he's chasing her away as a witch. He's not interested in her at all, because it means forgetting our relationship with the Lord, which a devotee is more concerned with than anything else, actually. All the different things that are going on around us, the ups and the downs of life, the rocky road back to Godhead, and all the different rocks we have to get over. All these different problems are there. But for the devotee, his lifeline is his remembrance, smaranam. I was just reading the other day, Jiva Goswami explains Shravanam and Kirtanam can only really be properly practiced if one also employs smaranam at the same time. So while you're hearing and chanting, you have to be remembering Krishna as well. Otherwise, you're not really hearing and chanting. So that smaranam is taken away in the Brahman. We forget our relationship. We're just floating around in bliss, and we just go with that. And then after however long it takes, sooner or later, a desire pops up in the heart. And because that desire is not to render service to Krishna, then we have to come back to square one, like snakes and ladders. And then you go back sliding down the snake, And here you go again.
Being afraid in the Brahman. I was wondering if that's how that is. Because in the material world, generally we have a body and we're afraid of death. Maybe the positive side of that is we see this has a beginning and an end, so there's an urgency to try to achieve something before the end of it. Whereas in Brahman, it's timeless, so maybe there's no urgency to do anything. And I wonder if the lack of the sense of timelessness is attributed to his fear.
Well, yeah, what's interesting is that was the unique position of Gob Kumar. And so he went through the Brahman and came out the other side. But unfortunately for a lot of us, if we were in Brahman, we would just quite happily forget anything other than the Brahman. But Gob Kumar didn't want to forget. He was afraid of losing his connection. So that's the difference. And we have jnani tendencies within us because we want to be in a carefree situation. Why can't my life just be free of any problems? You know, why can't I just be carefree and just float along like a cloud in a bright blue sky? So this is the jnani. He wants to be merged and forget everything and just float along carelessly. And the devotee is praying, let the calamities come upon me again and again. If they're bringing me closer to you, then fine, bring them on. Let my mind flow toward you like the Ganges flows towards the sea. Don't let it be impeded. And if anything can help it become more flowing faster toward the sea, then bring it on. I don't mind. The quicker I can get into the sea, the quicker I'll get free of all my problems. So that's how a devotee sees things. But a jnani is thinking, well, once I lose my identity, then I won't suffer anymore. I won't have any problems. I'll just merge into the oneness. But then you lose your personality when you're in the Brahman. Everyone is just all merged into each other, and you know, it's not that part of the Brahman is the funny part that tells jokes, and that part over there is the Brahman that's a bit kind of worried about business things, and that part of the Brahman over there, he likes pushing people around and being in control. The Brahman's just the Brahman. There's no personality. It's just all uniform oneness all the way through. So you lose that personality. So for a devotee, he understands that his identity is directly in relationship to the Supreme Lord, and that if he forgets the Supreme Lord, he will lose his identity. And that for a devotee is the most scary thing. He's the most afraid of that. First thing Krishna says to Arjuna is Nato evaham jitu nasam. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So that distinction, Srila Prabhupada speaking actually, Rishikesh is sounding quite sick in 77, and he's talking to this Indian gentleman, and he says, what is the goal of knowledge? And the Indian gentleman says, to become with the one amongst the many. And then Srila Prabhupada says, and when will we one? And the Indian gentleman says, oh, yeah, I don't really know, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, never was there a time when I did not exist, no you. When will we one? And then the Indian gentleman goes to speak again, and Prabhupada says, never was there a time. So, so the devotee is attached to, there's two types of attachment to Krishna. One is where the devotee feels that he is Krishna's, and the more stronger one, more powerful one, is that the devotee feels that Krishna is his possession. He's attached to Krishna in that way. That Krishna is mine. So that's considered the most intense. And that's what we're aspiring for. I was just reading this morning, Rupanuga, Raganuga Bhakti. Raga is one who blushes with passion, and Anuga means to follow those that blush in passion for Krishna. Raganuga. So that's what the Sampradaya is offering us. Our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya is offering that. And the Brahman is just like a kind of distraction from that. And the devotee is not interested in relief from suffering. He's interested in remembering Krishna, becoming absorbed in Krishna. And all these other things are just... In fact, we've just finished reading, Jagi and I, Simple for the Simple. And Mother Ratnaranjini, she has some friends come and asking her, and Mother Ranjini's, they're saying they're having different problems, and Mother Ratnaranjini's solution to all the problems is chant Hare Krishna. And one of them says, when I chant Hare Krishna, it gives me a headache. And Mother Ranjini says, then chant more and the headache will go away. So anyway, we maybe one of the reasons why we take up chanting and devotional services because we wanted to remove problems, and it doesn't seem to be removing the problems. It seems to be sometimes intensifying and increasing the problems. But the solution is not to give up devotional service or chanting Hare Krishna. The solution is to intensify, chant more, chant better, serve more, surrender more. That's the solution to the problems, not to give up. In fact, there's a nice instruction by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says, when mundane thoughts come into your mind when you're chanting, don't slacken your attempt to chant, but see that this freedom from mundane thoughts is an irrevocable result of continually chanting. So sometimes when we're chanting, we're practicing Krishna consciousness, our faith is being tested because we have a preconceived idea of what we think it's supposed to bring, and it doesn't seem to be bringing that. And then we can think, oh, maybe I should just give up, But what's all that's happening really is we're moving out of the mode of passion and more into the mode of goodness. Mode of passion, we have all these different desires and expectations of what's going to happen if we chant. A utopian idea of how everything should work out. And maybe it's not going according to our plan, Maybe there's some other plan going on. And we're not aware of what it is. We're only aware of our plans. So our first plan should be, let's find out what the bigger plan is so I can fall in with it. That should be the plan. Unless you want to make Krishna laugh. If you want to make Krishna laugh, then you can tell him your plans. Any other questions? Comments? So the general thrust of the purport and the translation is, if you forget who you are and you forget who Krishna is, then you'll get birth and death, repeated birth and death, mrite mriti, death after death. Birth automatically means death, and if you remember, then you get all these benefits will come from remembering. So Maya's job is to make us forget, and Krishna's job is to make us remember. And Krishna is more powerful than Maya, so we have to keep that dialogue going all the time with Krishna. Please help me. Please help me to remember you all the time. Don't let me ever forget you. Machita savadagani maprasada tarishasi. If you remember Krishna all the time, then savadagani, all the problems will disappear. If we can remember Krishna all the time. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Until it goes wrong. And then, oh, what's happening here, I've been remembering Krishna, why is everything going wrong, And then, so we have all these amazing pastimes to read about in the Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, where great devotees have things go wrong and how they react to that, how they come through that, come out on the other side. And they're there to show the example for us so that we can also understand what we should do at that time and not become bewildered. Bhogeshvara prasaktanam. Those who are attached to opulence and sense enjoyment are bewildered, and they're resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. So we have to become free from those material plans and desires. Otherwise, they'll obscure our ability to appreciate how the Lord is making some plan for us, which is very auspicious. Just in time for a question. Because, well, actually, it's funny you should say that, because that's exactly what it's saying in the translation here. It's temporary because with the body comes death. You can't get a body, not even Hiranyakashipu, who performed so many austerities and was trying to do a deal with Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma says, I can't give you one of those because I've not got one myself. You know, if I could give you one of them, I'd have one myself. A body that doesn't die. So, and it's just a question of how temporary it is. You may have a body that lasts just one day, or you may have one body that lasts the lifetime of Brahma. But in terms of eternity, then all these times are fleeting. All we get is a glimpse of eternity, knowledge, and bliss in the material world until we get free from the body. So that's the concomitant factor of the material world. Everything is temporary. Kamala dala jala, jivana talamala. It's all tottering. Anything can go any minute. Trying to make all these plans. And what plans can you make to stop a drop of water tottering off a lotus petal? Kamala dala, jivana talamala. And then Prabhupada saying at the end, well, actually in the text, sorry, in this way, by the influence of his actions, one body comes from another, and after one death, another death takes place. So all that happens is, Srila Prabhupada explains like that in that album, that he becomes more implicated in the intricacies. The more he struggles against Maya, the more bound up he comes by Maya. What an arrangement, eh? The only way you'll get out of the spider's web is if you don't move and you just call out, Krishna, Krishna, and then Krishna can come along and take you out the web. But if you try and wriggle and try and make some arrangement yourself, you will let the spider that you're there, and then you become more entangled. And when the spider comes over, the spider paralyzes you, wraps you up, and then eats you alive. Material energy. Nature's showing us, sometimes we watch these nature programs and it seems really nice, and then you see what's actually going on, it's very ruthless. Everyone's fighting to survive, and not everybody can survive because somebody has to get eaten by somebody else. So you're feeling sorry, we're watching this program, we're feeling sorry because this polar bear was trying to get this seal, and the seal was with its mom, it was a baby seal. And the polar bear was running over, and the mother managed to grab a little baby seal, and just as the polar bear came, it yanked it down into this hole under the ice, and they swam away, and you're thinking, oh wow, that's great, the little seal got saved. But then underwater you see them, and the seal's there with a little baby seal, and they're just tucking into some fish, so the fish is going to get it. So either the seal gets it, or the fish gets it. Or if the fish doesn't get it, then the fish is swimming around looking for a worm, and the worm gets it. Or you could feel sorry for the polar bear, that the polar bear is going to get it now, because the polar bear, that was the only meal it was going to be able to get. Hasn't been eaten for the last month. And now the polar bear is going to die of starvation, which is what's happening actually. Polar bears are dying now, because there's not enough to sustain them. All these lessons are there, telling us, stop trying to make it cozy. Get back, get out the material world. Get back to where you once belonged. Cozy. You know what cozy is? Comfortable, yeah. Yeah, hunky-dory. Everything is nice. called the glamour image in advertising, where you see this image and it portrays eternity, bliss, and knowledge. And the person's looking at it, and he sees this really cozy scene. The man's just come back from a cold day, hard day at work. It's all icy and cold outside, and the door's just opening, and there's a golden light coming out, and he's coming home now back into a hot house, and the wood fire is burning, and everything's going to be nice for him. And just as he's about to come into the situation, it's described that the anticipation of sense gratification is the most intense part of the illusion. It's the anticipation. But as soon as the door opens, the wife's there with rollers in her hair and a fag hanging out of her mouth, and she's saying, "What time do you call this?" And then immediately back to the material world. So it's the anticipation that this is going to be eternal, full of bliss, full of knowledge, but it never is. It's the same every year, isn't it, at Christmas? When you're a kid, you're thinking, wow, this is going to be amazing this Christmas. A couple of days later, it's everyone's depressed again. Anticlimax. Uncle Calamity and anticlimax. I hope I've depressed everyone now. So the Bhagavatam is giving a very scathing picture of what material life is like, but not without giving also a very positive alternative. These days it's very fashionable to stand up and decry all the things going wrong in society. But there's very few that are coming and standing up and coming up with something positive. You see with the politicians now, no one's really coming forward with anything other than just to criticize the other politician and bring him down. But where is the actual positive alternative, the positive solution? So the Bhagavatam is showing us material life is very dark, spiritual life is very bright. Shravana Mangalam, Srimad Atatam. It's auspicious and it's all powerful. And the more people are unaware of this, then guaranteed the more there will be mental health difficulty, which eventually leads to physical health difficulties. And they're referred to, actually, the wife and children and possessions are referred to as fallible soldiers. So the king is there in his fort, and he's got all his fallible soldiers. And then when the kingdom is besieged, he turns to his fallible soldiers, and they're like, "There's nothing we can do. You're growing old. You're going to die. Good luck." There's that very scary picture in the Bhagavatam, and all the family around, and the man's dying, and the Yamadutas are yanking him out of the body. And they're not aware of it, they're all thinking, "Oh, at least he died peacefully." And he's out the body like, "Ah!" And the body's like finished, And they're thinking that it must have been okay, it must have been a good death. He went with a smile on his face. But he got yanked out by the Yamadutas. And so then the people, he's crying to his wife and children, no, look, the Yamadutas have got me, please help me. And they can't hear a thing, Oh, look, Daddy died peacefully. They actually have to do that with when a person dies, they have to do cosmetics to make him look like he's okay, because if you actually saw what a lot of them look like, they don't look very pleasant, actually. And that's the reality. That's supposed to make people take it serious, and really want to apply themselves to for devotees. Any last questions or comments? We'll finish a little bit early. It's quite straightforward, isn't it? Michi. Deha deho mritamati. So the body means death.
Shouldn't it say after one death, another death, as opposed to after death, birth again? Yeah, I just wonder why I would say that.
Yeah. Yeah, generally we say birth after birth, but actually death after death. Yeah, every day follows with a night. So yeah, it's just showing you really the pessimistic. Srila Prabhupada said we should be pessimistic actually about material life. So it's very pessimistic. There's no real solution because the person cannot escape death until he gets out the material world, however many times he takes birth. So it kind of flattens any solution other than getting free from having a body. It's funny actually, the body is referred to as flapping, that it flaps. Because if you look at a flag, it's completely just flat, you know, and then when the wind blows, it flaps. It looks like it's got a bit of life in it, you know, and as soon as the wind stops, so the body is just like flapping, you know. Oh, hello, Uncle Alf. How's things going? I just won the lottery, and it's flapping about, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's full of life, isn't he? He's full of the joys of spring." But then, as soon as the energy goes, it just goes back to what it was, which is just a dull, inert material carcass, which is actually dead all the time. So when you go from death to death, you go from this dead object to another dead object, into another dead object. And none of the objects are alive. They only appear to be alive because you're making them flap. As soon as you take the glove off your hand and throw it on the floor, you know, the glove was waving at everyone. Then you pull the glove off and throw it on the floor. And Prabhupada was saying, you'll do so much to look after your finger. But as soon as the finger gets cut off, you just choke it in the bin. It's disgusting. Who wants to smell your rotten finger? Before it was attached to your body, you know, you'd spend millions of pounds because a little pain in the tip of your finger, chopped off, get rid of it, throw it in the bin. No use to me. So the whole body is just it's a dead thing. You know, it's only appearing to be alive, but it's actually dead. And we had a book coming back, and one chapter was soul research, and they were doing tests on people in glass cases just before they died, and then as they died, they wanted to see if, you know, and sometimes the glass case would crack, and they were trying to work out what is it, what's gone. And one minute there was a twinkle in the eye, and now the twinkle's gone. What's happened? What's the difference? It's exactly the same. The dead body is exactly the same as the live body, and physically everything is still there, the same. All the chemicals, all the muscles, the veins, everything's there. But no, the thing is useless, doesn't work anymore. So what good is a dead body? You know, if a man goes on his dating site and he can't get anyone, and they say, well, we have got someone, and you know, she's a great girl, Penelope. There's only one problem with Penelope. She's actually dead, but apart from that, everything is fine, you know. It's like, well, who's gonna be interested, right, with hanging with Penelope? So in the same way, all the bodies are actually dead, and the thing we want to hang out with is the soul inside the body. That's what we want, and so that's the illusion. We keep taking these dead bodies, compromising, selling for second best, third best, 10th best. So why not just get free from the body? And in our spiritual body, we can actually feel real satisfaction. ISKCON Guru Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. All of you, Ki Jai. Hari